Hello, and welcome to the CASTcast. This is the podcast for the Association for Software Testing, and more specifically for the Conference for the Association for Software Testing, otherwise known as CAST. I'm Michael Larsen.
And I'm Claire Moss.
And today we are joined by two callers. So we'd like to welcome Justin Harrison and Chris Burgoyne. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So the way that we like to start these podcasts is get a little bit of an introduction, origin story, so to speak, for our guests. And so we've got two, so you can jockey for who wants to go first.
Justin's our primary speaker, so I'll go first and maybe get out of the way. This is from Chris Burgoyne. Perhaps typical of many testers, I came into software testing on sort of an indirect route. I was an English major. I got hired as a technical writer at a small company. In a small company, you do a lot of everything. I did marketing, and I did proposals, and I did the software testing. And that grew into a career for me. We did that for a good decade. In the last few years, we moved into performance testing, and that's where we came in contact with Justin.
Yeah, so my background started in software engineering. I've worked pretty much my way through the entire IT gambit, from network admin to sysadmin, to web design to software engineering. And now I've branched out into performance testing. Essentially, that started when we had a need to fill in a previous project, kind of took on that role, and we've been working to grow our practice ever since.
That's very cool. Well, glad to have both of you here. Let's transition a bit to your talk and what you are both going to be discussing, and that is, what the heck do performance testers really do? And that's actually a really good question. What do performance testers really do?
You want to take that, Justin?
Sure. One of the points we're going to speak to during the talk is essentially the breadth of knowledge that a performance tester or performance engineer really needs. One of our big roles is we have to go in and understand a software project at the same level as the DBA, but we also have to understand the software project at the same level as the project manager. So that's one of the things that we want to speak to is all the different skill sets you need and all the different technologies you need to be able to understand in order to test a software application end to end and within the scope of performance.
For many of us, of course, the classic image is, you just take a tool, you replicate a bunch of data, you just spit a bunch of stuff across the line at the app, and you wait until it falls to its knees. Easy, right? I'm being facetious.
Yeah, so that's one type of performance test where we essentially are stress testing the system to see what kind of threshold it can hit. The major type of performance test that we specialize in is essentially being able to recreate and represent production level throughput at a measured sustained rate in a pre-production environment. So one of our specialties is being able to go in and meet with business, analyze legacy data from legacy systems, and be able to interpret that and recreate a test that during execution is going to very, very closely represent the load that you expect from your users during peak use of your application.
Another element to where we come in is, where the performance tester fits in the organization, as well as where they fit in with the functional testers. In our experience, we tend to be a supplemental team where we'll work with a client who's already got a pretty robust quality control system. They've got a testing team that's doing functional testing. And we, as consultants, have to come in, one, learn the application pretty quickly, and then secondly, explain to people what we're doing. There's the obvious, yes, we're going to try and load up the system and maybe break it. But what we found is once you're in there, people start to ask for new tests. There's a lot of misconceptions about what a performance test is. We get a lot of tests that we're asked to create. I think people think that's magic. We have to talk a little bit about how much effort it takes to create a performance test and create that scripting. Because once you have it, they see you just working out their system. They're like, oh, great. They invent new tests for us immediately.
I'm curious about the way that you do your scripting. I've heard of tool-assisted testing, and it sounds like you could do performance testing that you as a person are actively monitoring but I don't know, and maybe interacting with the system as you are running those scripts. I don't know if that's something that you would consider a normal thing for a performance tester to do, or if that's my functional testing background creeping in.
That's a little more of the functional testing creeping in when you're talking about being specifically in the system in a manual type of interface during a performance test. From time to time, we'll spot check a system manually, but for the most part, everything's automated. We use a tool called JMeter. We also have some proprietary libraries that we've written to extend JMeter, which we use specifically. In addition to that, we also have a proprietary in-house tool which we developed for the analysis of performance test results. And what that has allowed us to do is essentially keep a comprehensive history and library of every test we've executed on a per project level for a client. The other thing it allows us to do is to take analysis of the results down to seconds before we have the results processed. And the application finally allows us to get a much deeper dive into our data. We can look at it a couple different ways. We've spotted a lot of things off the bat that we wouldn't normally get to see without the use of this application. So everything we do is tool assisted, like I said, with a couple special caveats written by VPS to help extend the functionality of a lot of those tools.
So I hear a lot about non-functional requirements, and you are clearly living in that world. What is the negotiation like in figuring out what to do?
As we prepare for this, I think about my role versus Justin's. Justin is our engineer, and he scripts these tests and he runs them and he tweaks them and he finds out what's going wrong with the code when the tests are complete. Where I tend to come in, and this is really a full-time job, if you think about test process, well, how do you test? What are the requirements? The tester comes in and essentially hardens the whole software life cycle. So we test from requirements. Requirements have to be documented. You go to the documentation. Invariably, in my experience, as soon as I start pulling that thread, you're going to find a hole. You're going to find things that aren't well documented. The ticket for us would be go test it. To answer your question, we have to work pretty closely with the clients. What are you really looking to test here? The functionality, the non-functional requirements. Non-functional requirements is essentially our pass-fail tends to be time-based. Does the page load within 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 5 seconds? What we'll find often is the clients don't have a great feel for that. You sort of have to midwife that a little bit. Picked up a long time ago, I'm not sure everyone in testing absorbed this, but it was called transcendental quality, which was simply, I know it when I see it. So a lot of the business we work with, they've got a sense of that. They really just want their systems to work well. And then you have to press them. Well, what do you mean well? We need something that's testable. We need a requirement that is empirically testable. So you start working with them to say, well, when you say it's working well, what's that mean in terms of time, throughput, how many people can be in the system, what activities can be going on in the system. Our process invariably really involves a lot of essentially business analysis work. And that's how our team is, I think, typical in this respect. I think this work always has to be done, but it doesn't get really booked. Most people, when they think about performance testing, they think about the scripting.
If you say, go to the client and you say, hey, what did you have in mind? And they don't really have an answer. Do you say, well, let's see what we can observe and then give them results and see how you can iterate on those? Or is it usually like setting expectations up front and then trying to iterate against those expectations?
It can be both. A lot of times we end up doing a baseline test. If they say, well, I want it to run well, but I don't know, where to start. And I say, well, let's run it and see what we get. And we'll call that a baseline. And from there, we'll start talking about the next test. So once you've set the baseline, say your system can handle 100 users, but at 200 users, the wait times start to go up. We sort of talk about next steps.
Well, all right. It sounds to me like we've got a very interesting talk and something that I think sounds pretty compelling. And we want to encourage everybody out there to come on out and have a listen to this conversation by all means. But of course, to do that, you need to go to www.associationforsoftwaretesting.org, click on the CAST 2017 link, and sign on up and come join us in Nashville, Tennessee. Gentlemen, to close this out, can we get a little bit about you, next steps, how can people contact you, ways to learn more about you and what you're doing?
We work for Vision Point Systems. We're based in Virginia. Easily available if you go to ses.visionpointsystems.com. You can check in on us. Our company does a lot of consulting, business process management, any kind of software engineering, consulting, mobile apps. Our history is in telephony. We've done a lot of large-scale IVR systems. We've done a lot of validated work in the pharma space, which is its own niche. You can click on our link to performance testing and contact us there.
Fantastic. Well, all right. So we definitely look forward to seeing you both at CAST in Nashville. For those listening, we hope that we get a chance to see you at CAST in Nashville too. In the meantime, we're going to take our leave, but we look forward to talking to you again in the next few days and having another discussion right here on the CASTcast. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us on.